and welcome to our morning edition of Arirang News. We begin with these stories making the headlines at this hour. With just days left until the July 9 deadline for tariffs, U.S. President Donald Trump says he will start sending out letters to other countries as early as July 4th. President Trump also discussed Ukraine with his Russian counterpart Vladimir Putin in a phone call, but the two sides weren't able to make meaningful progress on ending the war. Kim Min-seok has now become the Prime Minister of South Korea after the parliament gave the green light for the four-term lawmaker to take the role. Rival parties also passed a revision of the Commercial Act during a plenary session at the Nat'l Assembly. We begin in the U.S., where President Donald Trump says he'll begin sending letters about tariff rates to countries starting this week. With just days left before a temporary halt on tariffs expires, countries are scrambling to meet the deadline. Our Park Eun-woo starts us off.
U.S. President Donald Trump is preparing to send out letters this week, notifying countries of the tariffs they'll have to pay.
We have, far more than 170 countries. And how many deals can you make? And you can make good deals, but they're very much more complicated. I'd rather send out a letter saying this is what you're going to pay to.
He added that roughly 10 countries will receive these letters each day, starting Friday. U.S. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent said Thursday that Trump will be the one to judge whether negotiating countries are acting in good faith. But he also warned that tariff rates set in early April could boomerang back if talks fall through, with discussions ongoing.
Negotiations with the United States are ongoing as we speak. We are ready for a deal. We want a negotiated solution, and we're preparing for the possibility that no satisfactory agreement is reached. All the instruments are on the table.
South Korea, with a 25% tariff rate set in April, is also working to meet the deadline amid some uncertainty.
7월 8일까지 끝낼 수 있는지도 확언하기 어려워요. 지금 최선을 다하고 있습니다. 최선을 다하고 있고 또 쌍방의 모두에게 도움이 되는 그야말로 호혜적인 그런 결과를 만들어내야 하는데 아직까지도 쌍방이 정확하게 뭘 원하는지가 명확하게 정리되지는 못한 상태입니다.
South Korea's Trade Ministry said Chief Trade Negotiator Yo Han-gu is making plans to visit the U.S. for talks this weekend for a second round of trade talks with the aim of reaching an agreement before the deadline. Park Eun-woo, Arirang News.
So with less than a week before a 90-day pause on Trump's so-called reciprocal tariffs is set to expire, eyes are now on whether the South Korean government will be able to reach a trade deal. For more on what to expect, we're joined by Professor Kim Yong-jin, professor at Seogang Business School. Professor Kim, thanks for joining us this morning.
Good morning. Happy to be here.
Good morning. So the UK and Vietnam have struck trade deals with the United States, while Trump specifically cast doubt on the possibility of a trade deal with Japan. What do you think will be the case for South Korea?
Well, as we mentioned, the UK and Vietnam became the countries which complete the trade deal with the U.S. And then the U.S. will charge 20% tariff on import from Vietnam under a new trade deal. In addition to it, this is a very interesting part, the U.S. will impose a steeper tariff of 40% on goods that pass through Vietnam in a process so-called transshipping, which amount would be a third of all Vietnamese export to U.S., according to Peter Navarro, Trump's senior counsel on trade and manufacturing. Most interesting part of the deal to me is what Mr. Trump mentioned. The president said on social media, Vietnam will do something that they have never done before, give the United States of America total access to their market for trade. In other words, they will open their market to the United States, meaning that we'll be able to sell our product into Vietnam at zero tariff. I think, this is the very nature of the deal. Mr. Trump wants to open up the market of the trade partners to U.S. He made it in the negotiation with Vietnam. Based on that understanding, we can guess what will be happening to the Korea-U.S. deal. The negotiation between Korea and the U.S. is still going on. The target outcome of the U.S. is not very clear or clearly delivered to Korean negotiators. So the two countries need more time to negotiate before they close the deal at the moment. I think, the due date will be extended once more.
I see. And South Korea's top trade negotiator is set to visit Washington again this weekend. And this comes just days before the deadline. What will be the #1 priority for Korean officials as they, work to reach a deal and minimize the impact of potential tariffs?
Well, we can understand the situation of the tariff negotiations between two countries through the President Lee Jae-myung's, press conference yesterday. President Lee told the press conference yesterday, marking his 30 days in office, that tariff negotiations were clearly not easy, and it was difficult to say for sure whether to complete the negotiations by July 8th, although his government, was doing its best. Seoul and Washington should produce mutually beneficial outcomes, but what each side demanded had yet to be clearly decided. Based on the statement of the president, what we can see is that the negotiation won't be closed within the time frame suggested by the U.S. So the priority of the Korean delegation will be the understanding of the key purpose of the U.S. What kind of things the U.S. want to achieve, and then getting of the due date extension for the trade negotiation.
Right, it really is a difficult issue indeed. And South Korea's proposed regulations on U.S. e-commerce firms doing business in South Korea are reportedly complicating negotiations. And the issue of digital trade seems to be a major sticking point in the talks, right?
Yeah. It'll be one of the key issues that need to be discussed in the trade negotiation. It is known that 43 lawmakers of the United States urged the Donald Trump administration to address what they call the Korean government unfair barriers, like non-tariff barriers, right? Targeting American digital service providers. Online Platform Act of Korea has been discussed for a long time to regulate the monopolistic online platforms to protect the users. Under the previous Yoon Suk-yeol administration, there were bipartisan effort to designate major online platform operators subject to stricter antitrust regulations. Although the antitrust regulator ultimately decided to target dominant players only when irregularities are uncovered, the U.S. has continuously objected to the proposed changes, warning of possible retaliation. So, in sum, the online platform regulation of Korea would be on the trade negotiation table, absolutely.
Right. And what cards does South Korea hold in tariff negotiations with the U.S., do you think?
Well, that's the part, Still, President, Lee Jae-myung said, we are preparing for that. But anyway, we have been discussing the issues quite a long time. It is very clear now, what the Trump administration really achieves through the tariff negotiation. If they impose the planned tariff on the imported goods, the consumer price in the United States will go up to negatively affect inflation and economic growth of the United States. So it won't be the outcome of the Trump administration pursues. What the U.S. really want to achieve is to open up the markets of the trade partners like Korea so that their product and services are sold more in the partner countries, which in turn reduce the trade deficit. In this sense, Korean government may offer several options, let's say including more import of U.S. agricultural product, meat, natural gas, and crude oils to contribute to the trade surplus of the U.S. This might be the things, President Lee mentioned.
Right. And South Korea, faces 25% reciprocal tariffs. What's likely to happen after the pause expires on July 9th? And which South Korean industries will be the hardest hit once the tariffs go into effect next week?
Absolutely. And if the 25% reciprocal tariff, goes into effect, Korean companies, because Korea really rely on export, for economic growth, these Korean companies will experience a big trouble due to the price increase in the exported product to the U.S. The demand may decrease, So absolutely export will decrease. However, the reciprocal tariff would be imposed on all other countries. Like the negotiation is only done with 2 countries, right? So the negative effect will be limited. I think the 25% reciprocal tariff will be imposed after, it won't be imposed after July 9th because Korean government tries hard to cooperate with the U.S. in the negotiation. Let's see what will be happening.
Right, Professor Kim, we'll have to see how it goes. Thank you so much for your insight today. We appreciate it.
Thank you, for having me.
South Korea's current account remained in the black in March for the 25th month in a row, logging a current account surplus of $10.1 billion in May. According to the Bank of Korea on Friday, the figure is nearly double the number recorded in April, possibly due to a slower rise in oil prices and reduced imports. The central bank also said while this was the 3rd largest surplus on record for May, exports fell for the first time in 4 months as autos and steel struggled under U.S. tariffs. From January to May this year, the cumulative current account surplus stood at $35.11 billion, up $8.05 billion from the same period last year. Agricultural and food products exported from South Korea came to a record high in the first half of the year, led by growing popularity of Korean food like ramen and hot sauces like gochujang and 쌈장. Our economic correspondent Park Junan has the details.
South Korea's K-Food Plus exports, which combine agricultural products and agro-industrial goods, reached an all-time high in the first half of 2025, according to the Ministry of Agriculture, Food, and Rural Affairs. The total export value hit $6.67 billion, which is around 9 trillion won, a notable increase of 7.1% from the same period last year, driven by strong global demand for Korean food products. By region, North America was a standout market, with exports reaching $1.03 billion, a 24.3% increase from a year earlier. The European Union and the UK followed closely, with exports to these countries rising 23.9% to $420 million. Exports to the Commonwealth of Independent States, including Mongolia, climbed 9% to $240 million, while shipments to Gulf Cooperation Council countries rose 17.8% to $180 million. Although the first quarter outperformed the second overall, key markets such as the US, China, and Japan saw stronger growth in the second quarter, with shipments to the US standing out. Among processed foods, ramen was a major export driver, reaching $730 million in sales. Spicy ramen and new product launches resonated with global consumers, especially in markets like the Commonwealth of Independent States, China, and the US. Sauce exports grew 18%, totaling $220 million in gochujang, 쌈장, and other sauces, reflecting the rising global awareness of Korean foods. The Agriculture Ministry said its plan is to reach $14 billion worth of overseas shipments by the end of the year.
We must expand the export base by promoting product development at the corporate level and creating new agricultural products. It's also crucial to identify and address challenges Korean exporters face in the U.S. and other alternative markets through coordinated government efforts.
Amid global trade uncertainties, the ministry added that it will actively support exporters through overseas online and offline promotions, consulting on tariffs and non-tariff barriers, and responding to export risks such as currency fluctuations and logistical issues. Park Junan, Arirang News.
And U.S. President Donald Trump also spoke to Russian President Vladimir Putin for nearly an hour. This was their 6th phone call this year, but little progress was made on efforts to end the war, as the Russian leader stressed that his country will not give up its aims in Ukraine. Our Lee Seung-jae has more.
U.S. President Donald Trump and his Russian counterpart Vladimir Putin held phone talks on Thursday. According to the Kremlin, Putin, while referring to the war in Ukraine, stressed that Russia will achieve the aims it set, which is to eliminate the root causes that led to the current state of affairs. Putin's message to Trump was also reported by Russia's state television.
Of course, during this call, the situation in Ukraine was discussed, so Vladimir Putin informed Trump that Russia will not step back from its goal of removing the root causes that led to the confrontation in Ukraine.
Moscow has long demanded that Kyiv give up its NATO membership ambitions. Still, during the almost one-hour-long talks, Putin expressed his readiness to continue negotiations, adding that Moscow is looking for a political, negotiated solution to the conflict. Meanwhile, President Trump expressed frustration over the lack of progress in the peace talks that the U.S. is trying to broker.
And we also talked about, as you know, the war with Ukraine, and I'm not happy about that. I'm not happy. No, I didn't make any progress with him today at all.
Ukrainian President Vladimir Zelensky expressed his hopes also on Thursday that he would have the opportunity to speak with Trump on Friday or in the coming days. He said that he wishes to discuss their bilateral relations as well as U.S. support amid the ongoing war with Russia. Zelensky also expressed hopes for continued support from the U.S. and Europe, stressing that strengthening cooperation and coordination through the U.S., the EU, and NATO is crucial. Lee Seung-jae, Arirang News.
And the U.S. has added North Korea to a U.S. cybersecurity threat list. According to the White House website on Thursday, President Donald Trump issued an executive order to add North Korea, Russia, and Iran to the existing list of threats. Trump's order noted that while China poses the most active and persistent cybersecurity threat to the U.S. government, significant threats are also arising from Russia, Iran, North Korea, and other countries. The previous Biden administration had issued an executive order only identifying China as a threat. The South Korean military has taken into custody a North Korean who crossed the military demarcation line, the inter-Korean land border, late on Thursday night. South Korea's Joint Chiefs of Staff said the individual crossed the line in the western part of the central front of the border and was then tracked and secured. Relevant authorities are to investigate the details of the individual's defection. No other abnormal activities have been detected in North Korea so far. The parliament approved Kim Min-seok as the new prime minister, with the ruling party unilaterally pushing through the motion amid a boycott by the main opposition. Our political correspondent Shin Ha-young reports.
Four-term lawmaker Kim Min-seok has finally been given the green light to take the post of prime minister 29 days after being nominated by President Lee Jae-myung.
I'll respect the will of the people, put the president's vision into action, and bring together the wisdom of lawmakers across party lines in managing state affairs. My top priority is overcoming the economic crisis caused by the forces of tyranny.
This comes after the Nat'l Assembly approved his appointment on Thursday to the only cabinet post in South Korea that requires parliamentary approval. Of the 179 votes cast, 173 lawmakers voted in favor, 3 voted against, and 3 ballots were invalid. The ruling Democratic Party, which holds a majority in the 22nd National Assembly, pushed the motion through unilaterally amid a boycott by the main opposition People Power Party.
Given the current crisis, it's a shame that the PPP continues to obstruct the process. If the confirmation of the Prime Minister, who is supposed to lead the cabinet, is delayed any further, the public won't stand for it.
Ahead of the plenary session, the PPP demanded Kim's withdrawal, calling him an unqualified nominee, citing his failure to submit key documents, particularly those related to his wealth.
There hasn't been a Prime Minister nominee with this many issues before. Once again, we urge President Lee Jae-myung, it's not too late. Withdraw Kim Min-seok's nomination.
The presidential office welcomed the approval, saying that it paves the way for Prime Minister Kim to work closely with President Lee and help him run state affairs smoothly. Meanwhile, despite the standoff over Kim's appointment, the parliament passed a revision of the Commercial Act during Thursday's plenary session, following an agreement reached the previous day. Among 272 lawmakers present, 220 voted in favor, 29 voted against, and 23 abstained. This was one of the contentious bills the two sides have been clashing over. The DP had pushed a revision to the act back in March, but it was vetoed by the previous administration. The revision aims to add the word shareholders to the director's duties from just company. It also introduces the so-called 3% rule, which caps the voting rights of the largest shareholder and related parties at 3% when appointing audit committee members at listed companies. The rule is intended to prevent undue influence and abuse of control by majority shareholders. This marks the first passage of a bill related to the people's livelihoods and the first time the rival parties have reached a bipartisan agreement on legislation since President Lee took office. 신하영, Arirang News.
Good morning, I'm Choi Ji-hee, and this is The World Now. We're beginning with footballer Diogo Jota. Liverpool's Portuguese forward Diogo Jota and his brother have died in a car crash in Spain. Diogo Jota and his younger brother Andre Silva, also a professional footballer, died in the crash just after midnight on Thursday local time on a highway near Spain's northwestern city of Zamora. Spanish authorities reported that the tire blew out from the Lamborghini they were driving in as it overtook another vehicle, causing the car to veer off the road and burst into flames. Emergency crews confirmed both men died at the scene. 28-year-old Jota had recently got married and had 3 young children. He was returning from vacation after helping Liverpool win the Premier League title. Jota made 182 total appearances and scored 65 goals for Liverpool. Tributes poured in from around the sports world, and hundreds of Liverpool fans gathered at Anfield, home of Liverpool, laying flowers in his memory. An investigation has been launched into the crash. The funeral is expected to be held on Saturday in the Portuguese city of Porto. Near Indonesia's tourist island of Bali, a ferry carrying 65 people sank late Wednesday night local time, leaving at least 6 dead and dozens missing. The KMP Tunu Pratama Jaya ferry, carrying 53 passengers and 12 crew members, as well as 12 vehicles, sank around 11:20 p.m., almost 30 minutes into the 5-kilometer Bali Strait crossing, after reportedly suffering engine failure and an engine room leak. Rescue efforts continued through Thursday in the rough seas, with 31 people saved but dozens still unaccounted for. On Thursday evening, rescue operations were temporarily halted due to strong currents, high waves, and limited visibility. President Prabowo Subianto has ordered a full emergency response while investigators examine the cause of the accident and whether unlisted passengers were on board. Indonesia experiences frequent maritime disasters due to its reliance on ferries and lax safety regulations. In Greece, a wildfire is spreading fast on the island of Crete, forcing over 5,000 residents and tourists to evacuate on Thursday. Strong winds reaching 80 kilometers per hour and extreme heat, linked to Europe's early summer heat wave, have led to the rapid spread of the blaze that broke out a day earlier. 230 firefighters and 46 fire engines and helicopters have been deployed to contain the fire, which are sweeping through forest, farmland, and residential areas. The fire service warns the island remains at very high risk, and with above-average temperatures and little rain forecast, containment is expected to take days. British band Oasis' highly anticipated reunion tour, Oasis Live 25, kicks off on Friday, July 4th in Cardiff, marking the first time Liam and Noel Gallagher have performed on the same stage in 16 years. Tickets for the UK and Ireland leg, featuring 17 stadium dates, sold out within 10 hours. A wide range of merchandise, including keyrings, hoodies, and shirts, is on sale ahead of the gig. The tour will travel globally after the UK run, heading to North America, Asia, Australia, and South America, with projected revenue exceeding $200 million. Oasis Live 25 will land in South Korea in October.
This year's monsoon season has officially ended for the southern regions and Jeju. In fact, Jeju saw its earliest monsoon end since the observations began in 1973, and the southern region recorded its second shortest monsoon period on record. However, central regions will see monsoon rain today with 5 to 20 millimeters expected. With heat wave alerts active across most of the country, the heat will persist day and night today. And this afternoon, Seoul gets up to 31 degrees, Daegu topping out at 36 degrees Celsius. Sunnier skies in southern provinces with stronger UV rays. Now, intense heat will continue to grip most of the southern regions, and Daegu will see temperatures soaring to 37 degrees by next Monday. So those traveling to southern regions this weekend need to prepare for some strong heat. In fact, the capital area will also experience some stronger heat next week. Meanwhile, the capital area and west of Gangwon-do will see some scattered rain through next Monday.
Now that ends this edition of Arirang News. Arirang News will be back at 5 p.m. Korea time. Thanks for watching.